The conference room air conditioning was making that specific death rattle that means you're about to lose a compressor. I should know. I'd been dealing with this building's mechanical guts for 15 years while Brooke Phillips was still figuring out how to spell MBA. But right now, the only thing louder than that dying AC was the sound of my career getting executed. Look, I'm Ryan Mitchell, 51 years old, and I thought I knew how corporate politics worked. Former Army logistics officer, spent 15 years running facility operations at this Austin tech company, kept 1.8 million square feet of glass and steel from collapsing under its own weight. But apparently, experience doesn't count for much when you're dealing with entitled kids who think business runs on vibes. Brooke sat at the head of the mahogany table. Mahogany I sourced from a sustainable supplier in 2016, by the way. She was 26 years old with an MBA that probably still smelled like the Harvard laminate it was printed on, wearing a power suit that cost more than Colton's truck payment, tapping her manicured nails on a stack of files. My files. "So Ryan," she said, the way she said my name tasted like she was spitting out something rotten, "we're pivoting." "Pivoting," I repeated. My voice was flat. "Desert highway at 3 a.m. flat." "Exactly." Brooke beamed, showing teeth so aggressively white they looked like chiclets cemented into a shark's jaw. "The board feels that operations manager is a very legacy title. It gives off 2005 energy. We're moving toward a holistic workspace experience model. We need fresh eyes, digital natives, people who understand that a building isn't just walls, it's a vibe. Now you gotta understand something here. I've managed every square inch of this property for 15 years. Handled floods, fires, IRS raids on tenants, and a previous CEO who tried to expense a stripper pole as ergonomic office equipment. I know every easement, every utility line, every zoning loophole within a 50-mile radius. And this kid, whose resume probably listed proficient in TikTok as a hard skill, was telling me about vibes. "Brooke," I said, leaning back in my chair. The leather creaked like old bones. "I manage the physical reality of this company. The lease you're sitting on. I renegotiated the property tax assessment 6 months ago to save us $45,000 a year. That's not a vibe. That's mathematics." She waved a hand dismissively like she was swatting a fly. "And that's great, Ryan. Really, super thankful for your service, but we're bringing in a new team, my team. We're rebranding the entire campus as the Nexus. It's going to be huge. And frankly, your analog approach doesn't fit the new aesthetic." The silence that followed was heavy, the kind of silence that usually precedes a court-martial or a lawsuit. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she wasn't joking. This wasn't a negotiation. This was an execution. "You're firing me," I stated. "We're sunsetting your role," she corrected, flashing that corporate smile again. "Effective immediately. HR has already processed the paperwork. Severance is, well, per the standard clause, 1 week. We need your badge and your laptop. Now, here's the thing that really got me. 1 week. 15 years of keeping this architectural ego trip from falling apart, and I get 1 week of pay and a kick in the teeth." My blood turned to ice water. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't fear. It was cold, sharp clarity, like swallowing a frozen razor blade. "Fine," I said. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the pitcher of cucumber water at her head, even though the physics of that trajectory played out beautifully in my mind. I just stood up. "Great. Love the attitude," Brooke chirped, mistaking my shock for compliance. She spun her laptop around, brand new MacBook Pro that she clearly didn't know how to use properly. "I'll just need you to sign this NDA. Oh, and Ryan, make sure you clear your personal stuff out by noon. We have the painters coming at 1 p.m., going for Arctic gray on the walls." I walked out of that conference room, my boots clicking on the polished concrete like gunshots echoing in a tomb. My office was down the hall, corner unit with a view of the desert mountains and the parking lot. The parking lot I designed. The parking lot where CEO Jordan Walsh parked his obscene Lamborghini every morning. Let me tell you what happened next. I grabbed a cardboard box from the supply closet and started packing my life. My stapler, my framed army commendation, a half-dead succulent that had survived longer than most of the relationships in this building. I could hear Brooke in the hallway laughing with one of her new hires. Yeah, the old guard is out, she was saying, her voice carrying like a foghorn of stupidity. He didn't even fight it. Total analog dinosaur. We're going to reset all the admin permissions this afternoon, switch everything to biometric access. Now, here's where Brooke made her first mistake. She said this afternoon. I looked at my computer screen. They hadn't locked me out yet. Rookie error. In facility management, you cut the digital throat before you cut the physical one. You lock the accounts while the person's still in the meeting. But Brooke was too busy high-fiving herself to follow basic security protocol. I sat down at my desk. My hands weren't shaking. 15 years in the Army teaches you steady hands under pressure. I opened the shared drive and found exactly what I was looking for. There it was. The master operations folder I built from scratch, the digital skeleton of the entire company. Now here's something most people don't understand about facility management. It's not just about fixing broken toilets and changing light bulbs. It's about documentation, contracts, legal frameworks, the boring stuff that keeps buildings from getting sued into oblivion. I didn't delete anything. That would be amateur hour, and it would get me arrested. No, I did something much more surgical. I went into the user permission settings for the sublease agreements. Those deeply buried, mind-numbingly boring PDF files that dictated who legally owned the rights to use the land beneath these buildings. Look, here's what I found. My name was listed as primary administrator. Brooke's name? Read-only access. I smiled for the first time that day. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a coyote spotting a three-legged rabbit. I dragged specific files onto my personal cloud drive, easement addendums, 2018-2024, and land use authorization, Shell Corp. Then I opened the system logs and turned off notification sounds for external exports. Basic operational security, something they clearly never taught at Harvard Business School. Hey, Ryan! Brooke's voice cut through my concentration like fingernails on a chalkboard. She was leaning against my doorway, holding some kind of green sludge in a mason jar. Chop, chop. Noon's approaching fast. Just clearing out my personal emails, Brooke, I said, keeping my voice sweet as antifreeze. Wouldn't want you accidentally seeing my fantasy football updates. Whatever, just hurry up. I grabbed my pathetic cardboard box of career memories and walked past her. Could smell her perfume. Something that reeked of entitlement and daddy's money mixed together. Good luck with the rebranding, Brooke, I said, stepping into the elevator. I hear Arctic Gray is very unforgiving if you don't prep the primer correctly. We'll be fine, she sneered. We're disruptors. The elevator doors closed like a guillotine, cutting off her smug face. I stood alone in that metal box, descending toward the lobby with 15 years of my professional life reduced to office supplies rattling in a cardboard box. But inside my chest, something had ignited, a cold, methodical fire. You gotta understand, they thought they were disrupting the industry. They had no idea they just declared war on the wrong veteran. The Texas sun hit me like a blast furnace the second I stepped outside. October in Austin, 106 degrees of pure, dry heat that sucks the moisture out of your soul before you know you're sweating. Usually I hate it. Today it felt appropriate. If the world was going to burn, might as well have the weather match. I walked to my truck, 2018 Ford F-150, practical and reliable as a military-issued rifle. Tossed the box into the passenger seat where it landed with a sound like broken dreams. Sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel until the hot leather burned my palms. I needed that pain, needed to focus. Here's what really got under my skin. 15 years. I'd missed my nephew's high school graduation for a weekend zoning hearing. Worked through pneumonia because the fire inspector was coming and I was the only one who knew where the updated sprinkler schematics lived. Given them my blood, sweat, and every weekend for a decade and a half. And they replaced me with a kid who probably thought escrow was some kind of cryptocurrency. I drove home to my ranch house on the edge of Cedar Park, where suburbia gives way to hill country's scrub brush and limestone. It's quiet out there, organized, my base of operations. Kicked off my boots, poured lukewarm tap water into a glass. Didn't deserve ice yet. Not until I figured out my next move. Went straight to the spare bedroom that most normal people use for Peloton bikes they never touch. I use mine for what the Army taught me, documentation and contingency planning. See, I keep copies of everything. Hard copies. Every major contract I ever negotiated, every addendum I signed, every city permit application. Old habit from my second deployment when a supply sergeant tried to pin missing equipment on me. I produced a duplicate manifest with his signature, and that was the end of that conversation. Since then, I've been what you might call a hoarder of bureaucracy. I pulled out a heavy plastic bin labeled Master Lease Land Use 2015 Present. Sat on the floor like I was field stripping a weapon and started hunting through documents. Flipped past utility contracts and janitorial agreements. I was looking for the foundation, the bedrock that everything else was built on. Now here's something that would blow most people's minds. The business park where Apex Digital Solutions sits isn't actually owned by the company. That's a rookie mistake most people make. Companies almost never own their real estate. It ties up too much capital. No, the land was owned by a holding company, a shell entity created by the original founders back in the 90s, when Austin was still weird instead of just expensive. I found what I was looking for, a thick document bound with a rusty metal clip. Master Ground Lease Agreement. Flip to the back, where all the legal boilerplate lives. Most people skip that section because it's boring as watching paint dry. To me, that boilerplate is pure poetry. It's where the knives are hidden. I remembered a conversation from 6 years back. The old CEO, Preston Ford Sr., had been paranoid about hostile takeovers, corporate raiders circling like vultures. He wanted insurance that nobody could sell the land out from under him. So we drafted something special, a very specific, very unusual clause about lease renewal and authorized liaison. Found it. Clause 14B, renewal of this master lease is contingent upon annual certification of compliance with City Zoning Ordinance 44B. Said certification must be submitted and signed by the designated operations liaison. I ran my finger down to the addendum filed 4 years ago. There it was, clear as daylight. Designated operations liaison, Ryan Mitchell. Not current operations manager, not facilities director. Ryan Mitchell. Me. Personally and specifically named. Old man Ford had trusted me more than his own board of directors. Smart man. He put my name in that contract like I was some kind of insurance policy against corporate stupidity, and right now, looking at those yellowed pages, I realized I was holding a loaded weapon that nobody else even knew existed. I checked the dates with the precision of a bomb technician. Annual certification was due October 15th. I glanced at my watch. October 12th, 3 days. If the certification wasn't filed by the deadline, this wasn't just some paperwork hiccup. According to Clause 14C, what old man Ford used to call his nuclear option, if certification lapsed, the lease terminated immediately and all property rights reverted to the shell entity's control. Now here's the beautiful part. I scrambled through another box of documents, looking for correspondence about the shell company. Found what I needed, a letter from 8 months ago. The management attorney had retired, and to save on legal fees, he'd transferred the day-to-day administrative power of attorney to the current site manager. That would be me. Again, let me spell this out for you. Technically, legally, and contractually, I was holding the keys to the entire kingdom. And these corporate geniuses had just kicked me out of the castle and locked the gates behind me, not realizing I still had the master key in my back pocket. A laugh started building in my chest. It sounded like a diesel engine turning over on a cold morning. Brooke was probably upstairs right now, picking out paint swatches and worrying about whether the vibe was disruptive enough. Meanwhile, the entire legal foundation of her precious nexus was sitting on my kitchen table, 3 days away from turning into expensive scrap paper. I reached for my phone and called the one person who could confirm that my reading of the zoning ordinance was still accurate. Sierra Parker down at City Planning. We'd been trading favors for the better part of a decade. City Planning, this is Sierra. Sierra, I said, leaning back in my chair and feeling something like hope creeping into my voice for the first time all day. It's Ryan Mitchell. I need you to pull the file on the Apex Digital lot. Need to know who the city recognizes as the signatory for parking structure compliance. Ryan! Sierra's voice had that gravelly quality that comes from surviving on vending machine coffee and bureaucratic frustration. Thought you were getting ready for that big investor dog and pony show on Friday. Well, plans change, Sierra, I said, watching a hawk circle outside my window. We're pivoting. The Travis County Department of Building and Safety smells like industrial floor cleaner and broken dreams. It's a beige monument to bureaucracy where hope goes to die in triplicate. Most people see it as purgatory. To me, it's always been the armory where I keep my best weapons. Sierra was behind the bulletproof glass partition, looking like she'd been living on nothing but caffeine and determination for the past month. Her desk was covered in permit applications and coffee-stained folders. We've been allies in the bureaucratic trenches for years. I expedite her applications when she needs quick wins for her supervisor. She makes paperwork disappear when I need to stall difficult inspectors. Well, if it isn't the logistics king himself, Sierra said, not looking up from her computer screen. You sounded strange on the phone yesterday. What's the mission this time? No mission, Sierra. Just need some clarification, I said, sliding a fresh Starbucks cup under the slot in the glass. Extra shot, 2 creams, no sugar. Her standard operational fuel. She grabbed the coffee, took a suspicious sniff, then nodded approval. All right, Mitchell. I pulled the file like you asked. I flipped open the thick folder and cut straight to what I needed, the authorized party documentation. There it was in black and white. R. Mitchell. Status? Active. So, I said, keeping my voice as casual as discussing the weather, hypothetically speaking, if someone needed to revoke the parking easement for that lot, say for emergency maintenance or safety concerns, how would that process work? Sierra looked at me over her reading glasses. Her eyes had that sharp focus of someone who'd spent 20 years navigating municipal law. Ryan, you know the regulations as well as I do. The authorized liaison has full discretionary power over emergency access restrictions for up to 48 hours without requiring a court order. Why? You dealing with structural issues? Something like that, I said. Maybe foundation problems. Could be a real sinkhole situation. Sierra kept digging through the paperwork, tapping her pen against a particular document. You know what's interesting? According to this update we received just last month, the lease on the auxiliary parking lot, that VIP section they use for executive parking, technically expired on October 1st. They're currently operating on what we call a month-to-month courtesy extension. I felt my pulse kick up a notch. I knew about the master lease, that was my nuclear option. But I'd completely forgotten about the auxiliary lot. That was prime real estate, the paved strip directly in front of the main entrance where all the important people parked their expensive toys. Courtesy extension granted to whom? I asked, though I was starting to suspect I already knew the answer. To you, Sierra said with a sly grin. The billing goes to the shell company, but the actual permit authorization is registered under your name. If you decide to withdraw that permit, the lot immediately reverts to unincorporated private property. Anyone parking there would technically be trespassing on private land. I felt a wave of pure, predatory satisfaction wash over me. It was better than winning the lottery, better than finding money in old uniform pockets. This wasn't just revenge anymore, this was poetic justice served with legal precision. Thanks, Sierra, you're a lifesaver. I know I am, she said, taking another pull of coffee. You look like hell, by the way. They working you too hard up there? You could say that, I replied, gathering up the paperwork. New management style, lots of energy, very disruptive. I walked out of that building with copies of every permit and authorization in my messenger bag. The afternoon heat was still brutal, but I barely noticed it. Got in my truck and spread out the city planning map on my dashboard. Old school paper, not some digital nonsense that could be hacked or manipulated. I traced the property lines of the Apex campus with my finger. Brooke and her team of digital natives saw a tech campus full of potential Instagram opportunities. They saw glass facades and open collaborative spaces and whatever other buzzwords were trendy that week. I looked at that same map and saw the truth. I saw property boundaries, utility rights of way, zoning variances, and legal frameworks. A delicate house of cards held together by signatures and permits, most of them mine. They thought they could swap me out like a defective printer cartridge. Problem was, they forgot I was the one who'd programmed the entire system. My phone buzzed with a text from Colton Davis, the HVAC contractor who'd been keeping this place running for 8 years. Solid guy, fellow veteran, the kind of worker who shows up on Christmas when pipes burst. His message hit me like a punch to the gut. Boss, new management terminated our contract, said our work uniforms weren't on brand. Brought in some app-based crew that doesn't even have proper tools. Thanks for the steady work over the years. That did it. Colton had twin daughters in high school. He'd worked holiday weekends and never complained about late-night emergency calls. Now some Harvard MBA was cutting him loose to save money for her rebranding circus. I texted back, "Stand by, brother. Don't take another job yet. Big project coming Friday. Cash pay, double overtime." "Roger that," came his instant reply. "What's the target?" I looked at the Apex building shimmering in the distance like a mirage made of glass and corporate arrogance. "We're not fixing anything this time." We're conducting a full tactical withdrawal. Thursday morning, the day before Brooke's big investor showcase, I walked into the post office at exactly 9 a.m., carried a white envelope addressed to Compliance Officer, Apex Digital Solutions. This was the legal requirement: 24 hours constructive notice of lease irregularity. Here's exactly what I knew would happen. Mail carrier delivers it around 11 a.m. to the reception desk. Except Brooke had fired the receptionist and replaced her with some digital check-in kiosk she probably saw at a tech conference. Mail gets dumped in a bin. Some unpaid intern picks it up, sees compliance officer, and assumes it's the usual boring government paperwork. Gets tossed on a pile to be scanned when we have time. Brooke would never see it. CEO Jordan Walsh would never see it. But when this all went to court, the record would show I'd provided proper legal notice. Military Planning 101. Always cover your six. I spent the rest of Thursday watching their amateur hour unfold from a safe distance. Brooke was live streaming again, looking more frantic by the hour. "Okay, Nexus family, tiny hiccup," she was saying, sweat visible through her designer blazer. "Our premium caterer had some issues with our payment timeline, but we're pivoting. Food trucks are way more authentic anyway. Much better vibe." I smiled. The premium caterer was probably Ashley Reynolds, who runs the best events in Austin. I'd casually mentioned to her yesterday that Apex's credit rating looked questionable. Ashley doesn't mess around when it comes to getting paid. At 4 p.m. my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Ryan Mitchell?" Young voice, definitely stressed. Speaking. "This is Casey from the Nexus. Formerly Apex. I'm the new experience coordinator." Poor kid sounded like she was hiding in a supply closet. "I'm trying to set up Wi-Fi for the outdoor press area, but IT says we need the root password for the external network router. They said you might have it?" I paused, letting the silence stretch. They were locked out of their own outdoor internet. Couldn't live stream their big moment without it. "I might have that information," I said carefully. "But I don't work there anymore, Casey. I believe Brooke called me a legacy issue." I know, she whispered like she was conducting a covert operation. But Brooke's completely losing it, screaming at everyone. "Please, can you just give me the password?" "Sorry, Casey, that would be a security breach on my part. But tell Brooke she should check the master operations folder on the shared drive. All the network credentials are documented in there. What I didn't mention was that I'd left a special file in that folder, not passwords, a PDF titled Network Access Codes.pdf. When opened, it displayed a single image, Danny DeVito holding a sign that read, 'You gotta pay the troll toll.' Petty? Absolutely. Professional? Not even close. But I wasn't a professional anymore. I was a ghost haunting their digital infrastructure. Friday morning, 8:30 a.m. I stood in line at the Travis County Clerk's office wearing my best dress shirt and the kind of serious expression that comes with 15 years of military discipline. The clerk, a woman named Michelle, who'd processed everything from quickie divorces to federal indictments, took my stack of papers without blinking. She stamped them with the kind of official finality that changes everything. Thunk. Filed. October 15th, 8:59 a.m. Just like that, Apex Digital Solutions lost all legal rights to occupy the parking areas or common grounds of 4400 Highland Drive. The lease was officially dead. "Give 'em hell, soldier," Michelle said with a knowing grin. I walked out to the parking lot where Colton was waiting in his work truck. Behind him, 3 massive flatbed tow trucks from Red Rock Towing sat idling like mechanical predators. Their diesel engines rumbled with barely contained power. "We operational?" Colton asked, leaning out his window with a cigarette hanging from his lip. "Mission is a go. Move to the staging area, that empty Kmart lot 2 blocks south. Wait for my signal. Show starts at noon, we execute at 12:15. The convoy rolled out like something from a military operation. I drove to Apex alone, parked across the street in the public lot of a strip mall, and pulled out my field glasses. The scene was pure chaos. They'd set up a white tent in the middle of my former parking lot. Balloons, a DJ booth spinning electronic nonsense, and an artisanal taco truck that probably cost more per hour than Colton made in a week. And there, gleaming like a red jewel in the center of it all, was Jordan Walsh's Lamborghini Huracan, parked diagonally across 2 handicapped spaces. Perfect. The arrogance was so complete, it was almost artistic. 11:30 a.m. Press started arriving. Local news van, tech bloggers with oversized cameras, a few investors in expensive suits. This was exactly what Brooke had dreamed about. Wall-to-wall media coverage for her big moment. Sometimes you really do need to be careful what you wish for. I opened my phone and sent one final email to the Apex Board of Directors. Subject: Urgent. Property rights terminated. Asset recovery in progress board members. Effective 8:59 a.m. Today, the master lease for 4400 Highland Drive has been legally terminated due to failure to maintain required certifications. All vehicles currently on premises are subject to immediate removal under Texas Property Code Section 94. Suggest you monitor local news coverage. Ryan Mitchell, Highland Land Holdings LLC, Administrator Send, 11:45 a.m. I watched through my binoculars as the General Counsel, Ashley Griffin, burst out of the building like her hair was on fire. She was frantically calling someone, probably every lawyer in Austin. Ran over to Brooke, grabbed her arm, started gesturing wildly at the parking lot. I could see Brooke's face, confused, then annoyed, then dismissive. She waved Ashley off and pointed at the news cameras. Classic mistake. She was so focused on her photo op that she ignored incoming artillery. Noon exactly. The music started. Some kind of electronic bass that probably sounded innovative to people who thought business was about vibes. Brooke grabbed the microphone. "Welcome to the future," she shouted at the crowd. "Welcome to the Nexus." I picked up my radio. "Colton, this is Ryan. Time to bring the rain. Copy that, boss." Rolling heavy. I put my truck in drive and headed straight for the main gate. The security guard, some new contractor who clearly hadn't read the updated access protocols, stepped out to stop me. I held up my city inspector credentials. Official business. The gate opened. Behind me, the tow trucks rounded the corner with amber lights flashing and air horns blasting like the cavalry arriving to save the day. The electronic music stopped mid-beat. Every head in that crowd turned toward the sound of approaching justice. The sound of 4 heavy-duty diesel engines cuts through a tech company launch party like a chainsaw through tissue paper. The crowd went silent. Investors clutched their champagne glasses. Bloggers started filming everything. I stepped out of my truck and slammed the door with military precision. The lead tow truck, a massive Peterbilt with Red Rock Towing painted in letters you could read from orbit, pulled up behind the Lamborghini like it was claiming territory. Air brakes released with that distinctive hiss that signals the end of someone's very bad day. What the hell is this? Brooke scrambled off her makeshift stage, nearly tripping over the microphone cord. "You can't be here. This is a private event." She ran toward me, her face red with panic and designer makeup starting to run. "Ryan, what are you doing?" "I told you to stay away." "I did stay away, Brooke," I said, projecting my voice just loud enough for the news cameras to pick up every word. "Stayed away from my personal belongings. Now I'm here in my professional capacity as administrator for Highland Land Holdings LLC to remove unauthorized vehicles from private property." "Private property?" Jordan Walsh pushed through the crowd, his linen suit wrinkled with sweat. "Mitchell, have you completely lost your mind? We own this entire campus." "Actually, Mr. Walsh," I said, pulling out the stamped legal documents, "you leased it." Past tense. As of 8:59 this morning, that lease was terminated for non-compliance with municipal requirements. You are currently hosting an unauthorized event on private land. This is insane. Who owns this property? "Highland Land Holdings," I said with a satisfaction so pure it felt like vintage whiskey. "And I'm the designated administrator." A camera flash went off, then another. The Channel 8 reporter was waving her cameraman to get closer. "Get security!" Brooke screamed. "Ma'am, security can't help you," I said politely. "This is a lawful property recovery operation." I nodded to Colton. He grinned like Christmas morning and fired up the hydraulic lift. The flatbed started tilting with mechanical precision. "Don't you dare touch that car!" Brooke's voice cracked with hysteria. "The rental deposit was $8,000. "Then you should have parked it legally," Colton said, connecting the tow cables to the Lambo's chassis. The sound of metal clicking into place rang across the parking lot like a judge's gavel. "Lift her up," I said. The winch engaged. The cable went taut. That beautiful red Lamborghini began its slow, humiliating journey up the ramp while 24 cameras captured every second. Someone in the crowd started laughing. Then someone else. Within seconds, half the audience was recording vertical videos for social media. "This is a complete nightmare," Brooke shouted, pulling at her hair. "You're destroying everything!" "No, Brooke," I said, checking my clipboard with bureaucratic calm. "I'm just doing logistics. You know, that boring analog stuff you didn't think was important." The Lambo reached the top of the flatbed with a final metallic clang. Colton secured the tie-downs, like he was wrapping a present. "Where are you taking it?" Walsh demanded, his face purple with rage. "Impound Lot B," I said, "about 25 miles south of town. Cash only for release. Unfortunately, since it's Friday afternoon, they're closed until Monday morning." "Monday?" "Daily storage fees apply," I said. "Market rates." The second tow truck moved toward the artisanal taco truck. The food vendor started waving his hands frantically. "Hey, I'm just catering! I don't know what's happening! Do you have a mobile vending permit for this specific location?" I asked. "Well, the event coordinator said she handled all the permits." "The event coordinator lied," I said. Loaded up. Complete chaos. Investors fleeing toward their cars. News crews broadcasting live footage of what would probably become the most epic corporate disaster in Austin history. The ticker at the bottom of Channel 8 probably read, "Tech company launch literally towed away." Walsh turned to his lawyer in desperation. "Ashley, fix this right now." Ashley Griffin looked at the legal papers I'd handed her, looked at me, then back at her boss. Her shoulders sagged with the weight of professional defeat. "I can't fix this, Jordan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's completely right. The lease is terminated. Clause 14C is ironclad. We have no legal standing here." Walsh stared at me with the kind of hatred usually reserved for war criminals and tax auditors. "You planned this entire thing." "I did," I admitted without a trace of shame. "I'm a logistics professional, Mr. Walsh. This is what good logistics looks like. Thorough planning, attention to detail, flawless execution." I turned and started walking back to my truck. "Where the hell are you going?" Walsh shouted after me. "To get lunch," I said over my shoulder. "I know a great taco place across town. This one seems to be temporarily unavailable." I didn't actually go get tacos. I drove home, poured myself 3 fingers of the good bourbon, a bottle old man Ford had given me for Christmas 5 years ago, and settled onto my back patio with my iPad to watch the show unfold online. Nexus fail started trending locally within an hour. The video of the Lamborghini getting dragged up the tow truck ramp was everywhere. Someone had already set it to the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme song. Brooke's screaming face became an instant meme with captions like, "When your disruption gets disrupted and TFW the vibe doesn't pay the rent." By 2 p.m., Apex Digital Solutions stock had dropped 12%. By 4 p.m., the board had issued an emergency press release. "We are investigating the circumstances surrounding today's events. Ms. Brooke Phillips has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending a comprehensive review of recent operational decisions." Administrative leave. Corporate doublespeak for pack your stuff, you're done. At exactly 5 p.m., my phone rang. It was Ashley Griffin. "Ryan," she said, sounding like she'd aged about 10 years in the past 5 hours. "We need to discuss terms." "I'm listening. The board is in emergency session. They want to know what it will take to get the lease reinstated." I took a slow sip of bourbon and watched the sun set over the hill country. "Ashley, you know as well as I do that Clause 14C is irreversible. Once terminated, the property rights have permanently reverted to the shell company. Ryan, please. Relocating the entire headquarters would bankrupt us. There has to be some kind of arrangement we can make." "Actually, there is," I said, feeling generous in victory. "I want my full severance package, tripled. I want Colton Davis and every other contractor you stiffed paid in full, plus interest, plus guaranteed contracts for the next 5 years. Done. Absolutely done. And I want the property lease renegotiated through my company, Mitchell Logistics LLC. Triple the previous rent, with me as the designated property management firm." There was a long pause. "You want us to hire you back as a consultant? To manage the same building you got fired from?" "Not hire, Ashley. You'll be paying rent to the property management company I now represent. If you don't like the arrangement, you're welcome to relocate your headquarters. I hear there's some nice vacant space out by the airport." She let out a long, defeated sigh. "I'll have the contracts drawn up." Excellent. Oh, and Ashley, make sure Brooke gets the memo. I'd hate for there to be any confusion about the new management structure. 3 months later, Mitchell Logistics LLC was managing facilities for half the tech companies in Austin. Turns out, when you actually know what you're doing and have a reputation for getting results, word spreads pretty fast in a town like this. Brooke Phillips? Last I heard, she was doing brand consulting for startups out of a WeWork space. Still talking about disruption and vibes, I'm sure. Some people never learn that business is built on foundations, not Instagram posts. Colton's doing great. His company landed the exclusive HVAC contract for the entire Highland Business Park. His daughters both got into UT, and he bought a new truck. American-made, naturally. As for me, I've got my corner office back, except now I'm not an employee. I'm the landlord's representative. The view's the same, but the perspective is completely different. Every morning I look out at that parking lot and remember that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting promoted. The Lamborghini, by the way, stayed in impound for exactly 72 hours before Walsh paid the $20,400 in storage fees to get it back. But by then, the story had gone national. The insurance company for the rental placed a hold on the vehicle pending investigation of irregular usage circumstances. Took them 3 weeks to sort that mess out. Justice, it turns out, has excellent timing.